Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody for taking the interest in being here. It's absolutely extraordinary. I took a photo from the back earlier, and it's just a sea of heads and bodies, which is just amazing to have this focus here in the room. As Mike said, I'm the CEO of the Local Government Association. In keeping with the trend, I'm a Generation X. Favourite movie is Grease. Yes, I saw it first when I was 3, which probably not a good choice on behalf of my mother, but when I look at it now, Jeff devastated me this morning. It turns out there's 2 levels within Generation X, and I'm in the older one now. So I didn't know that existed until today. Just before I start, and I've got to assure you I'm not going to be asking for volunteers. You heard earlier there's about 25, 30 people from local government here in the room. Can I please ask you to stand up? Probably from, I think I can see Bridget down the back, right up to Mayor Redman here. Some wonderful, amazing people. Firstly, thank you for all you do for our communities, but make sure you speak to these people in the breaks. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of information here in the room about all of the topics we're talking about today. So please seek these people out when we come to the breaks. Thank you very much for doing that. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm very, very privileged in my role to get around and see so many positive outcomes that are happening in our communities and genuinely observe. And we heard Minister McBain talking earlier about, I call it a soft spot for the relationship that we do have here in South Australia between state government, but the RDAs particularly, and local government. And I genuinely see the positive outcomes from that. And I think it's not a model without hairs, and I'm sure we'd all acknowledge that, but there's some really, really positive relationships that come from and outcomes for our communities when we're genuinely working together. And I'm reminded not that long ago, sitting in Senator's office in Canberra with local mayors and CEOs from a particular region, the regional LGA representative, the RDA representative, and myself, fighting for issues that were important for that particular community. And I'm pleased to say, for those of you that were there, we've actually got the meeting that we were seeking coming up, which is a really, really good thing. But just some amazing opportunities. Is this the flicker for the slides? Green. I always start with this one. Why? And look, I've been asked to sort of talk about how increasing the regional population increases the viability of local government. What I want to talk about, I really laboured over it, some really simple principles in there, things that you probably all know, but I just thought we'll throw them out, and it's just a good lead into to the panel later on. But I always like to start with just a general thing around local government, and a stat that a lot of you may not realise is if you look at rates as a tax, local government nationally collects about 3% of the taxation revenue. However, we're delivering 25, 26% of the services in our communities. So it is a really, really good bang for buck for our communities, and we're a part of our system of government that makes true sense to partner with. We are the most visible level of government, and with that comes good things and bad things, but we do have a key role in decision making and delivering services to our communities. We are the level of government that most people come into contact with for information and support. We're that part of government that looks our community, particularly regionally, in the eye every single day. Our mayors and CEOs and elected members, our staff would tell you you can't shop without someone providing feedback. Sometimes it's very positive feedback, sometimes it's not as positive, but we do look people in the eye. We're the level of government that's consistently sought out for commentary and leadership on local social issues. And we're best placed to see firsthand, and Sarah was talking earlier, that the social, the economic, the environmental opportunities and challenges for our communities. And we're always vexed in terms of how do we spend that really important community dollar that gives us the ability to do what we do. And the further out from the capital cities we go, the harder that gets, and the harder that decision is for the people entrusted with that community purse. Local government also provides the conduit by which regional communities express their identity. We heard that earlier as well. Enhance their wellbeing and provide key links into those local industries. Chat to Bim Lange, Mayor at the Barossa Council, about some of the exciting stuff he's been doing, looking for some really world-leading opportunities for the wine industry that we enjoy in and around the Barossa. We also connect and collaborate with other levels of government. And it's recognised that population growth really requires that strategic partnership between all three levels of government. I guess at the heart of it, we are a place-based leader now and into the future. The decisions we're making now, our communities, sometimes they may not experience the true benefit of that for 30, 40, 50 years. And I guess, to my point earlier, we really do need to engender that we model where local government works with the other two tiers of government and the RDAs to really deliver for those future community outcomes. And I guess in sort of finishing on this slide here, I just made a note here, and a lot of this I picked up from a guy by the name of Jonathan Carr West, who's the CEO of the Local Government Information Unit, which is a global think tank on local government. But he says local governments are active shapers of place and governing, convening, representing. They give institutional form to the aspirations of our communities. I believe in localism, both as a democratic ideal and because complex challenges are often met by local innovation. As a sector, we believe local government as the institutional form that facilitates and legitimises that localism. When it comes to the population growth side of things, I'm glad that slide worked because I couldn't read it before. Couple of cogs, gears. I know it's something that's often used and perhaps a bit hackneyed, but the population piece and the local government piece really do work together when they're working well. Occasionally we'll knock a few teeth off as we're trying to get things to sync, but effectively, as you're looking at on the right, the population growth drives a lot of things, particularly around increased production and demand. There's a larger working population, they produce more goods and services. There's a more diverse economy, and that's really important for councils to have that really broad base of things happening in their community to be able to be viable, active bodies. There's more local purchasing, super critical, and none so more than we saw during COVID, how important that was. Greater potential to attract and retain professional and trade skills required to support this growth and livability. There's more diverse employment opportunities, especially to support the carers of young people. I didn't realise till I started this job what a barrier to pretty much everything lack of childcare was, and it makes perfect sense, but there's so much more opportunities that we can unlock with that. We also get broader services and more education offerings. We start to get the more public, more private university, and there's often choice, which is really, really important. Health and allied services, huge issue for most of you in this room, and some more than others, but more doctors, more local specialists, choices of pharmacies, a pharmacy that might stay open longer than lunchtime every day. Huge things that come just with having more people in there. Recreation's really important. Aged care services. You see it, you know what I'm talking about, but there's a lot of stuff that comes from that. All of this leads to a strong local economy and an increased community expectations for growth, and then you start to get that improved quality of life and livability. So at the same time all that's happening, if you look at the local government side, putting it bluntly, more property leads to increased council revenue. But that's important. That's important because of the way in which it's spent and the way in which our councils actually consult with their communities about how they spend it. Critically though too, and you heard a little bit from Sarah, it's really important how this interfaces with state and federal funding. I forget the exact figure, but something like 40% of the councils in Australia rely on grant funding for more than 50% of their funding. So there's a lot that really provides. But for councils, we then start to get economies of scale. We can provide the services ourselves rather than contracting out. New revenue opportunities, new ways to think of our traffic flow. We know cars don't spend money in our local businesses, people do. So we need to think about how we actually do that. We also get improved community infrastructure, which is really, really important as well. Arts and cultural facilities. We heard a lot about the stuff from Mayor Redmond this morning that's happening here in Gawler, in sort of the amount of community focus that happens around that community infrastructure. Sports and recreation facilities. We know Mount Gambier, enormous swimming centre and community complex just been put up in Mount Gambier, but that's a region-changing piece of infrastructure that brings people all over the place into Mount Gambier. But ultimately, more community and social infrastructure that provides greater opportunities for social interaction and that wellbeing connection. Just very quickly, and I'm just cutting it forward because I'm getting I had the 5-minute warning about 2 minutes ago, so I'm fast running out of time. There are a lot of challenges with this. It is never sequential enough. The infrastructure is often required before the population is there. We need it in order to attract them. It is a bit of a build it and they will come, and more often they don't, but that's not always stacking up when it comes to the business cases. We need the right model. We've got to have the skills for growth. We've got to be able to manage that growth properly. Diversity, we heard about the huge amount of diversity coming through, and traditionally our communities aren't always set up to support that. Affordable housing, we need that. Now, we can't necessarily impact the increasing house prices and the lowering of the... thank you, Andrew. So our capacity to impact that affordable housing model is really tricky, but we've got to be there around the table, because if we're not around the table, chances are we're on the menu. I think Eleanor Roosevelt said that. But anyway, and then the geographical spread is difficult as well. We've got to have those capabilities to plan and manage local development. As I was saying earlier, we were in Canberra, the President and I, not long ago, and a lot of the conversations we were having, and I just want to sort of finish on this, is around this issue of the interconnectivity of all of these government plans that are coming out. So we were challenging the Federal Minister, Minister Bowen, around the rollout of the electricity plan, for example. It strikes us that no one's really looking at that particular rollout in relation to all of the federal and the state housing plans, the biodiversity overlays, the biosecurity overlays, the agricultural land. We've got a lot of space in this country, but a lot of it's not usable. And when you actually start looking at the impact of all of these things overlaying over each other, that's where at local government we start to feel and we start to experience people feeling disenfranchised by that. So you see the rise of protest groups in local government, struggling to see where they fit in and how they fit in, and not feeling a part of this process. So we're really pushing for that broader look of how this all comes together and syncs. So with that in mind, I might finish there so we can keep things going. Thank you very much.